Hello students, a very warm welcome to the module number 7, that is last part of unit 2 reactive power management. Today in this module we are going to cover the loading capability curve of a synchronous alternator. So let's begin. So we have majorly divided our unit number 2, that is reactive power management, into 3 modules. So up till now we have covered module number 1, that is basics of reactive power, necessity and pros and cons of the reactive power in a power system network. We have also seen the overview over the methods of controlling the reactive power. In the second module, we have gone through various reactive power management techniques, that is shunt compensation, series compensation and synchronous condensers. Now today in the third module, we will look onto the reactive power generation by a synchronous machine. Actually this part is covered in the module number 2 at the end after synchronous condenser, that is variation of excitation in the synchronous alternator and thereby varying the power factor of the particular system. In the third module, the only leftover part is the loading capability curve of a generator. So let's begin. So what do we mean by actually capability curve of a generator? Here it means that you deal with the certain limits of the synchronous generator. It is actually defined as a boundary within which the machine can operate safely, and these curves are sometimes called as operating charts or capability charts also. There is certain permissible region of operation of the alternator, and this region is actually restricted by uh, many other parameters like its MVA rating or its loading, that is megawatt loading, its field current, its armature current, and these all put limits for the operation of alternator. So let's see in detail. So your basically the generator rating is specified in terms of MVA and the power factor at a particular point of the terminal voltage. Also, the active power delivered by the generator is only limited by the power delivering capability of the turbine, right? We majorly deal with the active and reactive power. So active power depend, if we want to increase or decrease the active power, we need to govern the action of the turbine's rotation. Mechanical input must be increased or decreased. But the reactive power which a generator can deliver continuously without overheating is actually governed by three limits. One is your armature current limit, field current limit, and the end part is the heating limit. So these three limits will govern the reactive power that is flowing to and forth in from sending end to the receiving end. So these are the limits due to which your generator's operation is limited. So the other parameters, the other things which should be taken into consideration is the MVA loading should not exceed the generator rating. Whatever the manufacturer of that particular alternator provided on the nameplate detail, it should be followed very strictly. The MVA loading must not be exceeded, and this limit is actually determined by the armature of the stator heating by the armature current. Next is the megawatt loading that should not exceed the rating of the prime mover. As we have said previously, that your active power delivered by the alternator majorly depend upon the prime mover's rotation, that is mechanical input to the alternator. So that mechanical input should not exceed the its maximum limit or maximum capacity, so that the active power delivered by the alternator will not redefine or will not exceed its uh, transferring capability, and thus the loading will remain in a permissible limit. Third one is the field current should not be allowed to exceed, because if the field current will exceed beyond the permissible limit, your reactive power is going to cross the limit, that is, it is not going to be within the boundaries and may start heating the alternator. So that is why your field current should not be exceeded, thereby controlling the heating of the field. For a steady and stable operation, also your load angle must be less than 90 degree. We have seen previously in unit 1 how when the rotor angle used to increase beyond 90 degree, the alternator used to lose its synchronism, and this significance was seen using the synchronizing coefficient. So we know that this load angle must not go beyond the 90 degree. It should always be within the stable region, that is around 32 degree to 47 degree. So theoretical stability limit of the stable condition occurs when delta is equal to 90 degree. This is the stability limit. It is actually the maximum power transferred at delta is equal to 90 degree. So before going on to the phasor diagram, we will first look on to what limits the armature current. So here the armature current is actually the load current in the stator winding. Here in case of an alternator, your armature is stator and your field winding is a rotor. So whatever the current which is flowing in the stator winding is the load current or the armature current, and it is denoted by I. So this current will lead to heating of the stator winding due to the I square R losses. These are also called as copper loss or ohmic loss, which occurs due to the resistance in the stator winding. This means that a constraint is put by the limit of cooling of the generator stator winding. So ideally there is a balance between the heat produced by I square R losses or the cooling of the stator winding. But if the heating of the stator winding is more than its cooling, then it will lead to excessive heating and consequent damage to the armature of the generator. So therefore, the armature current of the generator shall not exceed the design maximum value. So we will see now a plot of the armature current limit on the PQ plane, that is active reactive power plane. We will take this power on x and y axis, and then we are going to see the uh, armature current curve on this plane. Now we know that your complex power is given by P plus JQ, which is equal to VI conjugate. Here I star is nothing but a conjugate of the I, and this can be rewritten as VI cos phi plus J sin phi. Now we will take the modulus on both the side. When we take the modulus, you will get it as p square plus q square equal to vi whole square. Now this equation is actually the equation of a circle, okay, with a center at origin and the radius is nothing but the vi. So if we try to plot with this equation, you get like a x-axis is nothing but a capital P active power, and y-axis denotes the reactive power. And what is the radius of this circle? The radius is nothing but Vi, that is product of voltage and current of the armature. It starts from origin and gives you the magnitude of the product of the uh, voltage and current. That is nothing but the radii of the circle. So this circle represents the armature current heating limit on a generator's operation. Now we will see the field current limit. As I have said you that field here in the alternator is a rotor part. The maximum limit on the value of the field current is imposed by heating in the field winding. So that current, field current, must be within the limit. in order to avoid this I square R losses, and which again causes the heating, because again your winding has the resistance parameter, and this causes the actually the heating. So a generator can only supply or absorb a fixed maximum value of the reactive power, because whatever the magnetic field is generated in the alternator is due to the field, that is rotor part of the alternator. And if this has the constraint of the maximum current which can flow through the field winding, and that must be within the permissible limit in order to avoid any kind of losses and thereby the heating. So the value of reactive power being supplied by the generator is having a certain constraint, so it can only supply or absorb a fixed amount of the reactive power. Now we know that here capital E is equal to Vt plus J into Ixs. This is actually the total amount of induced EMF in the armature conductors. So here E is the no load excitation voltage and Vt is the terminal voltage. So in this part, your Xs is actually the synchronous impedance and I is the load current. So here it is given like this. Theta is the angle. So your phasor diagram is drawn with the help of this equation. You are well aware in the machines subject about this phasor diagram. On the x-axis we have taken the terminal voltage, and your induced no load EMF is leading the Vt by angle theta. Theta is the angle between induced and the terminal voltage. Your field current I is lagging by an angle of phi, and here the vertical distance of this E and V is given by xs I cos phi, and this horizontal is xs I sin phi. Now what is this? We'll get to know. So here in this diagram, your xs I cos phi can be written by E sin theta using this theta between E and Vt. So we can rewrite xs I cos phi as E sin theta, and this I cos phi, from this above equation only we are taking xs on the right hand side, we get E sin theta by xs. This can be termed as your first equation. This is what we have written here. Now next is xs I sin phi can be written as E cos theta minus this Vt. So your I sin phi can be written as E cos theta by xs minus Vt. Okay, just we are simplifying this above equation in terms of I sin phi and I cos phi. Now your reactive and active component of the current are found, right? And these are the reactive and active component of the current which is being when multiplied with the terminal voltage gives out active and reactive power being delivered by the alternator. So this is the same thing I have written here. Capital P is equal to Vt into I cos phi. This is actually the active power being delivered or power transferred from that alternator. And your this can be written by E into Vt sin theta by xs from the above equation number 1. And here P is equal to E into Vt sin theta by xs. This can be treated as the third equation. So your active power is you know this active power before only, that is the power transfer capability equation. Okay, and theta here being the load angle. So now the reactive power is Vt sin I sin phi, multiplying the reactive component of the current with the terminal voltage. Now further simplifying, from the equation number 2, what we will get is E into Vt cos theta by xs minus Vt square by xs. So finally when you simplify it together, you will get as q plus Vt square by xs, and this whole part is equal to E into Vt cos theta by xs. This is the expression actually for the reactive power, and this is for the active power. So you know that these are dependent on the field parameter. How? Your active power consists of this capital E. This capital E is nothing but the no load induced voltage in the armature conductors, and that voltage induced depend upon the air gap flux in the air gap, right? So that air gap flux can be varying, and that air gap flux, how does it vary? It depend upon the field current. So indirectly your active power depends upon the field current. Also, and directly your reactive power depend upon the field current. So anyhow both depend upon the field current. Here it directly depend upon the induced no load voltage, and it depend upon the air gap flux, which in turn depend upon the field current. So finally your total active and reactive power can be given by this term. So here active power is taken on the x-axis, whereas the reactive power is shown here, and Vt square by x2 is the point from which your circle, that is Vt square by x2, is acting like a radius for this curve. This curve is nothing but the field heating limit curve, that within this curve only your field current must be given. So here we will see what is end part heating in the generator, because it is also imposing a limit on the operation of synchronous alternator. So basically end part heating is a kind of a localized heating at the end region of the stator core of generator. This heating is due to the eddy current losses in the laminations of the stator core due to end turn flux of the armature winding. This heating imposes a limitations on the operation of the synchronous generator, and such type of heating is nothing but a end part heating limit. So generally this end part heating puts a limit on the generator when it is operating under the leading power factor condition. Now why we are mentioning this leading power factor is because in the leading power factor what happens, your generally the generator is under excited, because see when there are changes in the excitation when it is either working under leading power factor condition or lagging power factor condition. Suppose if we take the example of overexcited generator, then what happens when the generator is overexcited? The retaining ring of the rotor is saturated because it is overexcited condition. So when the rotor is saturated, that will offer a very high reluctance path to the leakage flux, and therefore the leakage flux to the stator reduces, right? Because there is a reluctance for the leakage flux, and the leakage flux linking to the stator will get reduced, and thus when it get reduced there is no eddy current into this stator, and since there is no eddy current or there are no eddy currents, it will not cause any kind of heating. So this will reduce actually the end part heating. But suppose if we take an example of a generator when it is under excited, so what happens? The retaining ring of the rotor is not saturated now because it is under excited. So when it is not saturated, the reluctance is very low and the leakage flux will be very high now, which will link up to the rotor, and this will cause a eddy currents will be induced, and this eddy current will be so high that it will cause heating, and this heating will get increased with respect to the time. You know the heating curve, so it increases with respect to the time. Also, during the under excited condition, the flux produced by the armature current adds to the flux, and this flux which is produced by the field current. So what happened, this flux is produced by the armature current, and this adds to the flux produced by the field current. So your end turn flux increases finally, and due to the increase in the end turn flux, the eddy current induced into the end ring of the rotor also increases, and thus the heating also increases, and this the entire enhancement process will cause more heating in the end part of the generator and can cause a severely limit to the generator's output. So thus we see that the end part heating imposes a limit on the generator output under excited conditions. So here same thing is written, the machine is in under excited, therefore the field current will increase to meet the required working flux. Because how the flux is going to increase, because there is no reluctance to the leakage flux, so it will increase, and this will cause more end flux in the machine, and this will link with the stator laminations to cause the eddy current heating. So first we have seen the field current heating, sorry, the armature current heating, then we have seen the field current heating, and now we have seen the end part heating limit. So these three are the major type of the heatings which causes limits over the operation of entire alternator. So uh, some current components, that is the field current, will cause the limits on operation during the under excited condition, because the here the reluctance to the field flux is very less, so it will cause more heating, and armature current heating is both under because this armature current is due to the loading condition, so it will vary with respect to the power factor also, that is over excitation case and under excitation case. And here end part heating curve is seen only under the under excited case, because here we have seen how at the under excitation point your reluctance is very less, and large amount of flux links up to the end ring of the generator's rotor part, and this causes the huge eddy current which gives you high heating, and this will limit the operation. So these are total summed up and plotted on the PQ plane. As it is, we have summed up the curves of the field current heating limit and the armature current heating limit. So we will now sum up following all the points which we have seen and observed in the three limits. First one is the armature heating and the field heating limit are shown in the curve of QR and QT respectively. Both these curves cut at the point Q, which means the generator shall be operated at this point under lagging load conditions only. Next one is the end part heating is shown by the curve RS for leading load conditions. It is noted that the armature heating limit and the end part heating limit curve cut each other at the point R, and this point is the point of operation of generator under the leading load condition. So these are actually the points we are we are summing up from the last curve, that is the curve of field current heating, armature current heating, and the end part heating. So these are the summary points. The generator operation shall always be confined within the capability curve at all the time, unless else it may damage due to the overheating. Next is the capability curve is supplied by the manufacturer and work as a guideline for the operator of the generator. And the last is the capability curve is all about the heating of the different part, since field and armature and the end ring. So it is actually the heating of different part, and this means that if the cooling of the machine is increased, then the limits of the generator operation will also increase. This means the individual limit will increase and the operation boundary will be broadened. So if at the same point with the increase in the heating, if the cooling is also increased, then this curve might vary their dimensions, but if it is not, then they will remain same, and this curve is mainly given by the manufacturer itself. So here we come to the end of this module number 3 of, that is the last module of unit number 2, reactive power management. I hope you are clear with all the concepts. First we have gone through what do we mean by reactive power, need for the reactive power and its advantages and disadvantages of reactive power. Then we have briefly went into the details of various methods for managing the reactive power in power system network. We have seen majorly three techniques, that is shunt compensation, series compensation, and synchronous condenser method. In the third part we have gone through the excitation variation for the alternator and how it was varying the reactive power in the power system network. And the last one is the load capability curve of the generator, that when there are heating limits, then how the curve can be plotted and what are the parameters which are mainly affected when the heating do occur in the alternator, and then how the operation is limited due to the heating problem in the alternator. Majorly here we have seen only the armature heating curve, field current heating curve, and the end ring heating curve. And finally we have summed up all the 5 points from the curve. Thank you so much.